How do you remember her? You know, you must have had some great personal moments and great times that you can share with us, maybe, with the late Majesty?
Oh, I had some, sad times when members of the family passed away, but also so many happy moments, trying to avoid the press sometimes, give her a bit of privacy. Yeah. But no, I was just involved in lots of funny stories. I can give you a few examples if you want to. And of course, there's the famous story of the American tourists at Balmoral.
Yeah, we need to hear that one again. That's
Well, the one at Balmoral, normally the Queen would go to Balmoral, which was definitely her favourite residence, late July, and she'd stay there until early October. And police officers used to do 2 weeks there and 2 weeks back in London. And normally on my 2 weeks, every Thursday, when there wasn't a shooting day, the staff would make a little picnic. I'd put in my backpack, and the two of us would go walking up in the Highlands, sometimes for 2-3 hours. And it was the one day of the week she got a bit of peace and quiet. She didn't have red boxes and private secretaries chasing her. And we were walking along one sunny August day, and there's a couple of hikers walking towards us. And Her Majesty would always stop and say hello. And as it happened, there was an American couple on a walking holiday. And it was obvious from the moment we stopped that the American gentleman hadn't recognised the Queen, which is fair enough because she had a Barber jacket on and a headscarf. And he started telling Her Majesty where they'd come from America, where they were going to next. And I could see it coming. Where do you live? Well, she said, I live in London, but I've got a holiday home just the other side of the hills. How often do you come up here? You've heard this a million times before. How often do you come up here? Well, she said, I'll be coming up here ever since I was a little girl. It's over 80 years. And you could see him thinking, well, if you've been coming up here for over 80 years, you must have met the Queen. And as quick as a flash, she says, well, I haven't, but Dick here meets her regularly. He says, wow, you meet the Queen? What's she like? And I couldn't resist it because I knew she had a sense of humour. Well, she's very cantankerous at times. And then she gave me this look, and I said, but she's got a wonderful sense of humour. Anyway, before I could stop him, he comes across, puts his arm around my shoulder, gives his camera to the Queen, and asks her to take a picture of the two of us. Which she duly does, and then we swap places, and I take a photograph of them with the Queen. And we wave goodbye, and we never let on. And I remember the Queen saying to me, I just hope when he gets back to America and he shows those photographs to his friends, someone will tell him who I am.
I can never get bored of listening to that story.
Well, I remember up at Sandringham once when the Queen, we were there, Prince Charles had a girlfriend up there, and we were trying to get pictures of this, and the note came from all the editors, whatever you do not harass the Queen. So the Queen turned up with her dogs, and we all put our cameras down, and she did the back of the Range Rover, all the dogs piled out, and she looks round and she sees that no one's taking pictures. And she walks off with the dogs, looking round, no one's taking pictures. And she said to the policeman, and I won't say who it was, and he told me later, she said, what's all that about? He said, well, ma'am, he said, they've been told on no account must they harass you. She said, I don't know what's worse, she said, being harassed or being ignored.
What was she, I mean, you spent a lot of time, obviously, you'd have been travelling in cars, you'd have been travelling abroad, you must have had lots of private moments with her, which you can or cannot kind of talk about, but what personality traits that members of the public or people that have been supporting the royal family for many years that you would like to point out? Is there anything
I think a lot of the things people probably wouldn't have picked up on is Her Majesty's sense of humour. She just had a wonderful, wonderful sense of humour, and she was always playing little silly jokes on me. And I remember once taking her to visit the Queen Mother, because Queen Mum has a residence called Burke Hall, which is about 8 miles from Balmoral. And when I first started working for Her Majesty, we went down there one Sunday and she introduced me. Mummy, she said, this is my new detective, he's a Welshman. And they'd obviously worked this out between them. And the Queen Mum said, oh, Welshman, eh? Can you say the name of that very, very very long station in Wales? And I said, well, not properly. It's something like Llanfair, Pwthgwyn, Windrow, Llantydilio, off the Goth. Oh, no, you silly man. I'm in Cardiff Central. You know, and we get in the car afterwards, and the Queen says, I can't believe you fell for that. And another occasion, it's my little granddaughter, when she's 4 or 5, asked me to go to a school and give a talk, which I did. And then the biggest mistake I've ever made, when you ask children, don't ask them to ask you questions. Because I had questions like, have I taken the Queen to Pizza Hut? Did I have to sleep in the Queen's bedroom? did I have to go into the Queen's bedroom and turn her bedside light off? But a few weeks later, it was Christmas, and Her Majesty always used to host a Christmas lunch for her staff. And I was asked to propose a toast and to say a few words. And I said, what you don't know, Your Majesty, is when I gave that talk to Isla's class, some of the questions I was asked, number one, do we sleep together? And number two, when we go out in public, do we hold hands? And the Queen very quickly came back and said, well, I certainly hope not. And one of the footmen said, to which question? She said, I'm not telling you that, so that's Dick and I's little secret. And my wife's still trying to work out which one is the truth.
That's a shame, because on my list of questions, I was going to ask you some of those about the Pizza Hut. No, I'm joking. I'm sure I read somewhere the other day something about there was an incident at Balmoral where we thought that the Queen may have been shot. Was that the incident?
Oh, that's probably the one on the Grosmore, which I've read in the latest book about the Queen, which is slightly exaggerated.
What's the real story?
Well, the true story is we were out in the Grosmore one day, and the guns would all be in their little holes waiting for the grouse to come along, and the Queen and I and the lady in waiting would normally walk about 200 yards further back and sit in the heather and wait for the drive, and she'd send her gun dogs out to collect the dead birds. Anyway, on this particular day, it was just the two of us, and it was awful weather, really, really foggy. So we were stood up just watching the shoot. And I remember telling the Queen a story, and I remember looked back to make sure everything was safe. And I looked back, and the Queen had disappeared. And I thought, how does the Queen disappear on a Grosmore? And I quickly looked around, and there she was, lying at my feet. And of course, the worst thing for any protection officer is a member of the royal family to be taken ill, especially 60 miles from Aberdeen Airport, Aberdeen Hospital. Anyway, I quickly realised, I bent down to look after her, and I quickly realised what had happened. One of the guns had shot a grouse, and it had come tumbling out of the air. Now, you can imagine a chicken falling down from 200 feet and landing on top of you.
Oh, God, yeah.
And it landed on top of her. And, of course, there she was, blood and gore and feathers. And as it happened, she subsequently found out she'd broken a couple of ribs.
Oh, wow.
And I had to stand her up. And I always remember very discreetly trying to brush her down to get all these feathers and bits and pieces off her. And I remember saying to me, for goodness sake, just get on with it and clear me up. So there I was, sort of, with Her Majesty the Queen. And I remember saying, I really shouldn't be doing this, Your Majesty. Your husband's over there with a double-barreled shotgun. But I read a story recently in one of the books alleging that story happened, and the policeman went down and gave her mouth to mouth.
Oh, God.
And that's the closest she's ever been. I mean, that's a lot of nonsense, that was.
Yeah.